a powerful German shepherd labeled dangerous and kept in isolation. The shelter workers who feared him, and the cruel handler who used violence to control him. Then one day, a behavioral specialist saw what no one else could see. This incredible story of misunderstanding, trauma, and healing will change how you think about aggressive dogs forever and restore your faith in second chances. Caution: aggressive dog, staff only. The red warning sign hung prominently on the kennel at the far end of the North County Animal Shelter. Behind the chain-link door, a magnificent German shepherd lay motionless, amber eyes tracking every movement in the corridor without lifting his massive head. His black and tan coat, though dull from stress, couldn't hide his powerful build or the aristocratic lines of his face. The shelter staff called him Titan, a name chosen for his imposing size rather than any known history. He had been found wandering near an abandoned property 3 months earlier. No collar, no microchip, nothing to tell them where he belonged. When the animal control officers had attempted to capture him, he had growled and snapped, eventually requiring a catch pole to subdue him. Since his arrival, Titan's reputation had only deteriorated. He lunged at the kennel door when approached. He growled when fed. He had bitten one volunteer who had mistakenly entered his enclosure without following protocol. Now only James, the most experienced handler, dealt with him, a job he performed with grim efficiency and a heavy hand. "That one's never getting adopted," shelter manager Karen Morgan told new volunteers during orientation, shaking her head as they passed Titan's kennel. "Too dangerous, but we can't euthanize him because he was a surrender and technically shows no unprovoked aggression." What no one at the shelter realized was that Titan heard and understood far more than they knew. His ears twitched at each whispered assessment of his temperament, each dismissive judgment of his worth. He registered the fear in their sense, the tension in their voices when they approached his kennel. The shepherd's world had become a bewildering cycle of confinement punctuated by James's rough handling. The man never spoke to him except in sharp commands, yanked his leash during the brief daily walks, and had struck him more than once when Titan had resisted being returned to the kennel. During the quiet hours when the shelter was closed, Titan would sometimes stand at attention, ears pricked forward, as if listening for something far away. Then he would pace, making exactly 7 circuits before lying down again, his precise routine suggesting a previous life of discipline and order. On a rainy Tuesday morning in March, Dr. Sophia Reyes arrived at North County Animal Shelter, shaking water from her umbrella as she entered the reception area. At 43, with silver streaks in her dark hair and laugh lines around her eyes, she carried herself with the quiet confidence of someone entirely comfortable in her expertise. "Dr. Reyes, thank you for coming," Karen greeted her, relief evident in her voice. "We're at our wits' end with several of our long-termers." As a certified animal behaviorist specializing in rehabilitation, Sophia had built a reputation for working with lost cause cases. Shelters throughout the state consulted her, particularly when considering whether a dog was too dangerous for adoption. "Let me see your most challenging case first," Sophia requested, following Karen down the corridor of kennels filled with barking, jumping dogs eager for attention. At the end of the hall, they stopped before Titan's kennel. Unlike the other dogs, he hadn't moved at their approach. He simply watched, his gaze intense and unblinking. "This is Titan," Karen explained, keeping her distance from the door. "German Shepherd, approximately 4 years old. He's been here 3 months, highly aggressive, especially toward men. James is the only one who can handle him, and even that's becoming more difficult." Sophia stood silently, observing the magnificent dog. To Karen's surprise, the behaviorist moved closer to the kennel, not flinching when Titan finally rose to his feet. "There's something in his eyes," Sophia said softly. "Something I've seen before." What she recognized in that steady amber gaze would challenge everything the shelter thought they knew about Titan, setting in motion a chain of discoveries that would ultimately reveal an extraordinary dog beneath the fearsome exterior and expose a disturbing reality that had been hidden in plain sight. "I'd like to observe him with your handler," Sophia told Karen, never taking her eyes off Titan. "And then alone." Karen's eyebrows shot up. "Alone? Dr. Reyes, I really must advise against that. He's unpredictable, and I understand the risks," Sophia interrupted gently. "But I need to see his baseline behavior without outside influence." Reluctantly, Karen called James on the radio. The handler appeared minutes later, a stocky man in his 50s with a perpetual scowl and calloused hands. The subtle change in Titan was immediate. His muscles tensed, his ears flattened slightly, though his face remained impassive. "Need him in the assessment room," James said gruffly, barely acknowledging Sophia as he unlocked the kennel door. Sophia watched closely as James attached a leash to Titan's collar with practiced efficiency. She noted how he positioned his body, how he gripped the leash tightly near the collar, allowing no slack. Most tellingly, she observed Titan's behavior, compliant but rigid, moving with mechanical precision, his eyes never meeting James's. In the assessment room, a simple space with concrete floors and cinderblock walls, James commanded Titan to sit, which he did instantly. "He knows basic commands," James demonstrated, putting Titan through a series of sits, stays, and downs. "But he's unpredictable, can go from calm to aggressive in a second." Sophia nodded, then asked, "May I see how he responds to correction?" James gave a short heel command and began walking. When Titan lagged slightly, James yanked the leash sharply. The correction was excessive for the minor infraction, and Sophia didn't miss the flash in Titan's eyes. Not aggression, but something more complex. "That's enough for now," she said. "I'd like some time with him alone." James laughed incredulously. "Your funeral, lady." He handed her the leash, but added, "I'll be right outside. First sign of trouble, I'm coming in." When the door closed, Sophia did something unexpected. She simply sat on the floor, ignoring Titan completely, and began reviewing notes on her clipboard. The German Shepherd stood frozen, clearly confused by this departure from routine. For 10 full minutes, Sophia didn't look at him or speak. She sensed rather than saw his gradual relaxation, the slight lowering of his posture, the softening of his breathing. Finally, she spoke in a low, gentle voice, still not looking directly at him. "You're not what they think you are you?" Titan's ears twitched forward. Slowly, Sophia reached into her pocket and placed a small treat on the floor halfway between them. Then she resumed her note-taking, seemingly indifferent to whether he took it. Minutes passed before Titan carefully stretched his neck to sniff the offering. He didn't take it, but he didn't retreat either. "No rush," Sophia murmured. "We have time." By the session's end, Titan had accepted 3 treats from the floor, though he maintained his distance. Not once had he growled or shown any aggression. When James returned, Sophia was still sitting on the floor, Titan standing alertly several feet away. "Well?" James asked expectantly, reaching for the leash with a grip that made his knuckles whiten. "I'd like to continue working with him daily for at least 2 weeks, Sophia said, rising smoothly. "Alone." James scoffed. "You're wasting your time. That dog's wired wrong." Later, in Karen's office, Sophia chose her words carefully. "I don't believe Titan is inherently aggressive. His behavior shows all the hallmarks of a trained working dog who's experienced significant trauma." Karen looked skeptical. "He's bitten staff, Dr. Reyes." "In what circumstances?" Sophia asked. "I'd like to review those incident reports." As she suspected, each documented case involved Titan being approached suddenly, cornered, or physically restrained. Classic defensive reactions, not predatory aggression. "There's something else," Sophia added hesitantly. "I'd like to review your security footage, particularly of Titan's daily handling. Karen's expression shifted subtly. Is there a specific concern? Just thorough assessment, Sophia replied evenly. Though her suspicions had been growing since observing James with Titan. Standard protocol for cases like this. That evening, after the shelter had closed, Sophia sat alone in the security office reviewing hours of footage. What she saw confirmed her worst fears and steeled her resolve. Titan wasn't the monster everyone believed him to be. The real monster wore a shelter uniform and carried the keys to his cage. The security footage played on the small monitor, its grainy black and white images nonetheless clear enough to turn Sophia's professional concern into righteous anger. In the after-hours quiet of the shelter when no other staff were present, James's handling of Titan transformed into something disturbing. There he was, entering Titan's kennel with a catch pole, though the dog was simply lying in his bed. When Titan rose but didn't immediately come forward, James jabbed him roughly with the pole. Another clip showed James yanking Titan off his feet when the dog had paused to sniff during a walk. Most damning was footage from a week earlier, James striking Titan with a closed fist when the dog had growled after being kicked awake. Sophia documented everything meticulously, her hands steady despite her emotions. 20 years of behavioral work had taught her that evidence, not outrage, would save dogs like Titan. She wasn't naive. Working with shelter animals sometimes required firm handling, especially with large, powerful dogs. But what she witnessed was neither necessary nor professional. It was abuse, plain and simple. The next morning, Sophia requested an emergency meeting with Karen and the shelter's director, Dr. Alan Thompson, a veterinarian who oversaw operations but was rarely on site. These are serious allegations, Dr. Thompson said after reviewing Sophia's evidence. His face had grown increasingly grave watching the footage. James has been with us for 8 years. The video speaks for itself, Sophia replied calmly, and it explains Titan's so-called aggression. He's not aggressive, he's defensive around certain handlers, particularly males, and especially James. Karen looked physically ill. I had no idea. James always said Titan was dangerous without a firm hand. I'd like to remove Titan from this environment immediately, Sophia continued. I have a secure facility for rehabilitation cases. With your permission, I'll take responsibility for him while you conduct your investigation. It's not standard protocol, Dr. Thompson began. Neither is staff abusing animals in their care, Sophia countered. Titan deserves immediate intervention. After some discussion, they agreed. By noon, papers were signed transferring Titan temporarily to Sophia's care. When she went to collect him, James was nowhere to be found, called to an emergency meeting that would ultimately lead to his termination and potential criminal charges. Another handler helped her load Titan into her vehicle, surprised at how calmly the supposedly aggressive dog followed Sophia. The 40-minute drive to Sophia's rural property passed in silence. Occasionally, she glanced in the rearview mirror at Titan, secured in the cargo area behind a safety grate. His posture remained vigilant but less tense with each passing mile. Sophia's facility, Redemption Acres, sat on 15 fenced acres outside the city. The main house, a renovated farmhouse, connected to several carefully designed kennel buildings and training areas. Unlike the stark shelter environment, here natural light filtered through windows, comfortable bedding filled each spacious run, and the sounds of barking were muffled by acoustic design. Welcome to your second chance, Sophia told Titan as she led him into a quiet, private run at the end of the main building. Unlike the shelter's concrete cage, this space had a soft bed, toys, and a door leading to a small private outdoor area. Titan entered cautiously, sniffing each corner, before standing uncertainly in the center of the room. I know you don't understand yet, Sophia said gently, removing his leash, but no one will hurt you here. Over the next several days, Sophia established a careful routine. She approached Titan's space the same way each time, spoke in the same calm tone, and never forced interaction. She fed him by hand, one kibble at a time, gradually closing the distance between them. On the fourth morning, something shifted. When Sophia entered with breakfast, Titan didn't move to his customary alert position against the far wall. Instead, he remained on his bed, watching her with interest rather than wariness. When she sat on the floor with his food bowl, he rose slowly and approached, his body language softer than she'd yet seen. For the first time, he took food directly from her open palm without hesitation. "There you are," Sophia whispered. "The real you, starting to trust again." What she couldn't know was how completely her gentle persistence would transform this dog, or that Titan's true identity and remarkable history were about to be discovered, changing not only his future, but Sophia's as well. The breakthrough came on a rain-soaked morning during Titan's second week at Redemption Acres. Sophia had settled into a routine of spending several hours each day with him, gradually introducing more complex interactions. Today, she sat cross-legged on the floor of his run, reading aloud from a dog training manual. Her voice, she had discovered, seemed to calm him even when not directed at him. Outside, a spring thunderstorm had darkened the skies. When a particularly loud crack of thunder shook the building, Sophia glanced up, expecting Titan to show stress. Instead, his reaction startled her completely. At the sound, Titan immediately stood at attention, head high, ears forward. But instead of fear, his posture conveyed alertness and purpose. Then, to Sophia's astonishment, he began moving in a precise pattern, first to the door, then to each corner of the room, before returning to stand directly in front of her, his eyes focused and intent. "What are you doing?" she whispered, recognizing this was no random behavior. When thunder crashed again, Titan repeated the exact sequence, this time ending with his body positioned protectively between Sophia and the door. "You're searching," she realized aloud. "You've been trained to search after an explosion or loud noise." The German Shepherd's ears twitched at her words, his attention unwavering. Sophia slowly reached for her phone and pulled up a list of basic commands used in specialized working dog training. When thunder rumbled a third time, she waited for Titan to complete his circuit, then clearly stated, "Clear." The effect was immediate. Titan relaxed his posture and sat, eyes still alert, but patrol behavior ceased. It was a trained response to a specific command. Sophia's heart raced as the implications became clear. Titan wasn't just any dog. He was a professionally trained working dog, likely with specialized skills. This explained his precise movements at the shelter, his instant response to commands even from handlers he feared, and his complex reactions that had been misinterpreted as aggression. That afternoon, Sophia contacted a former colleague who worked with military and police canine units. After describing Titan's behavior patterns in detail, she sent several video clips she had recorded during their sessions. The response came within hours. "That's not shelter dog behavior. Those are search patterns and positioning responses consistent with advanced protection and detection training. This dog has had thousands of hours of professional handling. Send close-up photos of inside his ears and lower lip." Though puzzled by the specific request, Sophia complied, spending 20 minutes gently earning Titan's cooperation to photograph his ear canals and mouth. She sent the images immediately. Her phone rang minutes later. "Your dog has a tattoo inside his right ear, almost invisible unless you know what to look for. It's a registration number for working dogs trained through the Atlantic Shield program. They provide canines for military, police, and private security operations." "Can we trace it?" Sophia asked, hope rising for the first time. "Already did. His real name is Ranger. He was reported missing 18 months ago while working with a private security firm providing embassy protection overseas. According to their records, there was an incident, an explosion near their compound. Several handlers were injured, and in the chaos, Ranger disappeared. They presumed him dead or stolen. Sophia glanced through the window at the German Shepherd, now resting peacefully on his bed. How did he end up as a stray in North County? That's the question, isn't it? These dogs are worth tens of thousands of dollars. Someone either didn't know what they had, or there's more to the story. The company has been notified and is sending someone to verify his identity. After hanging up, Sophia sat quietly processing this revelation. Ranger, not Titan, had been a highly trained security dog, somehow separated from his handler during a traumatic event, then lost for 18 months before ending up in a county shelter where his specialized behaviors were misinterpreted as aggression. No wonder traditional shelter handling had failed him. No wonder he had reacted defensively to James's abuse. It contradicted everything in his training. When Sophia returned to his run, she approached with new understanding. "Ranger," she said clearly. His head lifted instantly, ears perked forward, recognition unmistakable in his eyes. "Ranger," she repeated, kneeling at his level. "I don't know what happened to you or how you got here, but we're going to figure it out." For the first time since she had known him, the German Shepherd rose and came to her willingly, without food or coaxing. He stopped just inches away, and after a moment's hesitation, lowered his head to rest gently against her outstretched hand. It was a gesture of such profound trust that Sophia felt tears spring to her eyes. The connection formed in that moment would prove critical in the days ahead, as Ranger's past came rushing back to claim him, bringing with it both healing and an unexpected choice for them both. 2 days later, a sleek black SUV pulled into the gravel driveway of Redemption Acres. From her office window, Sophia watched a tall man in his 40s emerge. He moved with military precision, scanning the property with practiced efficiency before approaching the house. According to Atlantic Shield, they were sending their head trainer, Marcus Donovan, to verify Ranger's identity and assess his condition. What they hadn't specified was whether they intended to reclaim him. Sophia met the man at the door, extending her hand. "Mr. Donovan, I'm Dr. Sophia Reyes. Ma'am." His handshake was firm, his expression carefully neutral. "I appreciate your contacting us about Ranger. Not many would have recognized the training or gone to the trouble of tracing him." She led him to her office, observing his rigid posture and the slight favor he gave his right leg. "You were his trainer?" "Trainer and first handler before he was assigned to embassy security." Donovan's face softened slightly. "He was exceptional, one of the best I've ever worked with. The report of his loss was difficult for everyone in the program." "I'd like to understand what happened to him," Sophia said, "if I'm going to help with his rehabilitation." Donovan nodded, though something flickered across his face at the word rehabilitation. Ranger was assigned to a security team at the American Embassy in Barakistan. During a routine patrol, there was an explosion, not a direct attack, but an electrical failure that caused a transformer to blow. 2 handlers were injured, and in the confusion, Ranger disappeared. Was he injured? Unknown. There was blood at the scene, but in the chaos, they couldn't determine if it was his or human blood from the injured handlers. Donovan paused. The area was politically complicated. Searches were conducted, but after 2 weeks, the operation was classified as a loss. Sophia considered this information carefully. And how he traveled from Central Asia to California? That remains unclear. These dogs are valuable, for their training certainly, but also for what they know. Someone may have taken him, then found him more trouble than anticipated. Something in his tone made Sophia wary. "Before I bring him out, I should explain his current state. He's been traumatized not just by whatever happened overseas, but by his treatment at the shelter. He's only recently begun to trust again." Donovan's expression hardened. "Dr. Reyes, I understand your concern, but Ranger isn't a pet. He's a highly trained asset with specialized skills. If he's sound, Atlantic Shield will want to recover him." The word asset rather than dog told Sophia everything she needed to know about Donovan's perspective. "Let's see how he responds to you," she said carefully. "But I should warn you, he's particularly defensive around men." They walked to the training yard, a fenced area with various obstacles and open space. Sophia had decided not to bring Donovan directly to Ranger's Run, preferring neutral territory for their meeting. "Wait here," she instructed, leaving Donovan in the center of the yard while she went to retrieve Ranger. When she returned with the German Shepherd on a loose lead, his transformation at the sight of Donovan was remarkable. Ranger froze, every muscle tense, his focus absolute. Then, to Sophia's surprise, he began trembling slightly. "Stand down, Ranger," Donovan called firmly. The dog's ears flattened, his posture lowering. It wasn't the joyful recognition of a beloved handler, but the compliance of a subordinate to authority. "May I?" Donovan asked, holding out his hand. Sophia nodded, though she maintained her hold on the leash. Donovan approached slowly, speaking in a language Sophia didn't recognize, likely the specialized commands used in training. Ranger remained still, allowing Donovan to check his teeth, ears, and the specific markings that confirmed his identity. "It's him," Donovan confirmed, his voice tinged with disbelief. "Thinner, some new scars, but definitely Ranger." What happened next changed everything. As Donovan reached to take the leash from Sophia, Ranger backed away, pressing against Sophia's legs. The movement wasn't aggressive. There was no growling or raised hackles, but the preference was unmistakable. "Interesting," Donovan said, his brow furrowed. "He's bonded to you." "Is that a problem?" Sophia asked, resting her hand reassuringly on Ranger's head. "It could be. These dogs are trained to work with multiple handlers, but they shouldn't show such clear preference. It suggests he's..." Softened. The word carried clear disapproval. For working dog programs like Atlantic Shield, emotional attachment was often seen as a liability, not an asset. "Or perhaps he's healing," Sophia countered, "from whatever trauma he experienced." Donovan straightened, wincing slightly as he shifted weight to his right leg. "I'll need to conduct a series of assessment tests. If he still has his training, Atlantic Shield will want him back in the program. And if he doesn't, then decisions will need to be made about his disposition." The clinical phrase sent a chill through Sophia. Disposition could mean many things in the working dog world, not all of them humane. "I'd like to be present for any assessments," she stated firmly. Donovan nodded curtly. "We'll begin tomorrow morning." As he turned to leave, Sophia noticed something she hadn't before, a slight hesitation in his movements, beyond the favor he showed his injured leg. A tension that suggested more than professional concern. "Mr. Donovan?" she called after him. "Were you there when Ranger disappeared?" He paused without turning. "Yes, Dr. Reyes. I was the handler injured in the explosion." With that revelation hanging in the air, he continued to his vehicle, leaving Sophia with the distinct impression that Marcus Donovan wasn't telling her everything about what had happened to Ranger, or why he had ended up half a world away from where he'd disappeared. Dawn broke clear and cold over Redemption Acres as Sophia prepared the main training field for Ranger's assessment. She had spent a restless night researching Atlantic Shield's protocols and considering options should they demand Ranger's return. The law was clear. As valuable property, Ranger legally belonged to them, regardless of his emotional state or the bond he had formed with Sophia. Marcus Donovan arrived precisely at 7, accompanied by another man who introduced himself as Dr. Alan Walsh, Atlantic Shield's veterinary behaviorist. The addition of a second evaluator suggested this assessment carried significant weight. "We've set up standard testing stations," Donovan explained, gesturing to various points around the field. "Basic obedience, scent detection, agility, protection work, and stress response. We need to determine if his training is intact and if he's psychologically sound for return to service." Sophia brought Ranger to the field, noting how he held himself tall beside her, calmer than she had yet seen him. It was as if he recognized the purpose of the day, drawing on his training despite the months of trauma and neglect. The basic obedience assessment went flawlessly. Ranger performed every command: sit, stay, heel, down, with precision that spoke to thousands of hours of training. Even more impressive was his response to hand signals alone, executing complex maneuvers without a single verbal cue. Muscle memory, Dr. Walsh commented, making notes. This level of training doesn't disappear, even with trauma. The scent detection tests proved equally remarkable. Ranger located hidden training aids designed to mimic explosives with methodical efficiency, his alert signal, sitting perfectly still before the target, clear and unmistakable. Throughout these exercises, Sophia noticed something curious. Though Donovan issued the commands, Ranger consistently looked to her for subtle confirmation before executing them. It wasn't distrust of Donovan exactly, but a new pattern had formed in the dog's mind. Sophia had become his primary reference point. The agility course revealed the first signs of change. Ranger navigated the obstacles competently, but showed hesitation at a narrow tunnel, something his training records indicated he had previously mastered. Situational anxiety, Dr. Walsh noted, possibly related to his experiences. The most concerning moments came during the protection work assessment, when Donovan ordered Ranger to guard an object, then had an assistant approach in a protective suit. Ranger's response was technically correct, but lacked the intensity described in his previous evaluations. He held the assistant at bay but showed no bite commitment when commanded to engage. "He's pulling his responses," Donovan said, frustration evident in his voice. "The training is there, but the drive is compromised." After 4 hours of testing, they took a break. Ranger stayed close to Sophia, his eyes rarely leaving her face. His performance had been impressive by any standard, but fell short of the specialized requirements for high-security work. "He's physically sound, but showing clear signs of psychological adaptation," Dr. Walsh summarized, reviewing his notes. "The bond he's formed with Dr. Reyes is affecting his working responses. He's seeking connection rather than simply executing commands." "Can he be reconditioned?" Donovan asked. The question hung in the air, its implications disturbing to Sophia. Reconditioning would mean breaking the trust Ranger had finally established, forcing him back into a purely working mindset. "Possibly," Walsh replied, "but it would require separation from Dr. Reyes and intensive retraining. Given his age and trauma history, there's no guarantee of success." Donovan paced the edge of the field, his expression troubled. Finally, he turned to Sophia. "There's one final test. I need to see how he responds to simulation of the incident conditions." "You mean the explosion?" Sophia asked, alarmed. "A controlled sound simulation only," Walsh clarified quickly. "We need to assess his post-traumatic responses." Though reluctant, Sophia agreed. Understanding Ranger's reactions to triggers from his past could be valuable for his continued rehabilitation, regardless of where he ended up. They positioned Ranger in the center of the field with Sophia at a distance. At Walsh's signal, an assistant triggered a device that produced a sharp, cracking sound similar to an explosion, followed by a series of recorded shouts in a foreign language. Ranger's response was immediate and heartbreaking. Instead of the defensive posture or aggression they might have expected, he began a frantic search pattern, running in widening circles, his nose to the ground. His movements became increasingly desperate until he finally raced to Sophia, positioning himself protectively in front of her. Trembling but determined. "My God," Donovan whispered. "He's looking for his handler." Walsh nodded grimly. "Not just any handler. He's looking for you, Marcus. That's a search and protect pattern. He thinks you're injured somewhere." The revelation landed like a physical blow. The pieces suddenly aligned in Sophia's mind. Ranger hadn't abandoned his post during that explosion. He had been searching for his injured handler, likely following training to secure and protect. "What happened after you were injured?" Sophia asked Donovan directly. The full story this time. Donovan's professional facade cracked slightly. I was thrown by the blast, unconscious. When I came to in the medical facility, Ranger was gone. The assumption was that he'd run from the chaos, or been stolen in the confusion. But that's not what happened, Sophia said with certainty. He was looking for you, following his training. Someone must have found him during that search. The German Shepherd stood alert between them, his eyes moving from Sophia to Donovan, as if trying to connect these humans who represented different chapters of his fractured life. As the sun began to set over Redemption Acres, the three humans and one remarkable dog faced a crossroads. Atlantic Shield had legal claim to a valuable asset, but that asset had been irrevocably changed by his experiences. For Ranger, the choice wasn't about protocols or legal ownership. It was about where and with whom he could finally feel safe enough to heal. The decision that followed would challenge professional boundaries, legal frameworks, and personal attachments, revealing that sometimes the truest measure of humanity lies in recognizing when to set aside institutional interests for the welfare of those who cannot speak for themselves. Sophia considered the implications. This wasn't just about keeping Ranger. It was about transforming her entire operation at Redemption Acres, potentially helping dozens of dogs like him while serving humans who had experienced similar traumas. "May I have some time to consider this?" she asked. "Of course," Winters replied, "but not too much time. The board meets next week to finalize departmental budgets." As the meeting concluded, Donovan asked to speak with Sophia privately. They walked together through the building's immaculate courtyard, the sounds of training exercises echoing from nearby fields. "There's something I haven't told you," he admitted, his customary rigidity softening slightly. "About what happened that day." Sophia waited, sensing the weight of his unspoken burden. "The explosion wasn't an accident. It was targeted, meant for me specifically." His voice dropped lower. "I had uncovered irregular activities within the security contractor working alongside us. When I reported it, things got complicated. And Ranger? He followed protocol perfectly. When I was injured, he secured the perimeter, then began searching for additional threats. The last thing I remember before losing consciousness was giving him the command to seek help." Donovan's voice caught slightly. "He didn't abandon his post, Dr. Reyes. He was following orders, trying to save my life." The revelation cast Ranger's 18-month odyssey in a new light. He hadn't failed his mission. He had been preventing its completion. "I don't know how he ended up in California," Donovan continued, "but I suspect whoever was responsible for the explosion intercepted him during his search for help. They would have recognized his value and the potential threat he posed if he could somehow identify them." "And now?" Sophia asked. "Now that investigation is closed. The responsible parties have been identified through other means. Ranger's testimony, so to speak, is no longer needed." A ghost of a smile crossed Donovan's face. "He's completed his mission. He deserves a new one worthy of his abilities." 3 days later, Sophia sat on the porch of her farmhouse, watching Ranger explore the property with newfound confidence. The legal paperwork from Atlantic Shield had arrived that morning, a complex agreement that would transform Redemption Acres into a specialized rehabilitation center for both traumatized working dogs and human trauma survivors. The program would combine Sophia's behavioral expertise with Atlantic Shield's resources and training protocols. Ranger would become the cornerstone, a dog who understood trauma from both sides and could help bridge the gap between human and canine recovery. As the sun dipped toward the horizon, Sophia reflected on the extraordinary journey that had brought them to this moment. A dog labeled aggressive and mistreated had revealed himself to be a hero of uncommon courage and resilience. A trainer bound by corporate protocols had found the humanity to see beyond his training, and she, a behaviorist who had always maintained professional distance from her cases, had found herself forever changed by one remarkable German Shepherd. Ranger trotted up the porch steps and settled beside her chair, his head coming to rest naturally against her leg. The simple gesture of trust from a dog who had every reason to distrust humans reminded her why this work mattered. "Ready for a new mission?" she asked, ruffling his ears gently. Ranger's amber eyes met hers with quiet intelligence. In them, she saw neither the fearful, sheltered dog others had labeled aggressive, nor the military asset Atlantic Shield had trained. Instead, she saw a partner, a being who had traversed trauma and emerged not broken but transformed, ready to help others find their way back from darkness. 6 months later, Redemption Acres welcomed its first group of participants, 3 veterans with PTSD and 2 retired police officers struggling with trauma, each paired with a dog selected for their complementary needs and personalities. At the center of the program stood Ranger, now healthy and confident, demonstrating to both humans and canines alike what healing could look like. The transformation wasn't just in the dogs or the humans they helped. Sophia herself had found a new purpose, expanding her understanding of trauma and recovery across species. Marcus Donovan visited regularly, his military rigidity gradually softening as he worked alongside the program participants, finding his own healing in the process. As for the North County Animal Shelter, the investigation prompted by Ranger's case had led to comprehensive reforms in handling protocols and staff training. James had faced consequences for his actions, while other staff members received proper education in recognizing and working with traumatized animals. On a crisp autumn evening, as clients and their canine partners practiced relaxation techniques in the main training yard, Sophia watched Ranger moving confidently among them, offering a gentle nudge here, a reassuring presence there. He seemed to intuitively understand what each pairing needed, drawing on his extraordinary history to connect with others in ways purely human therapists could not. He was never aggressive, Sophia explained to a new staff member observing the session. He was trying to communicate in the only way he knew, and no one was listening. Until you, the staff member noted. Sophia smiled, watching as Ranger expertly redirected a veteran's anxiety spiral by gently pressing against his leg, grounding him in the present moment. "Sometimes," she replied, "the most important thing we can do is simply listen differently, to see beyond labels and really observe what another being is trying to tell us." Across the yard, Ranger glanced back at her, his mission complete for the moment. In his eyes shone the quiet confidence of a dog who had found his purpose, not despite his traumatic past, but because of it. His journey from beaten shelter dog to healing ambassador embodied the truth at the heart of Redemption Acres, that even the deepest wounds could become wellsprings of compassion, and that sometimes those labeled aggressive were simply waiting for someone brave enough to hear their real story. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to the channel and leave a like. Share it with someone who understands that behavior is communication, and that with patience and compassion, even the most difficult animals can reveal their true selves. Remember that labels like aggressive often hide deeper truths, and that every being deserves someone willing to look beyond first impressions to discover the hero within.
An old German shepherd somehow found his way to visit his dying adopter at the hospice center, but what happened next will break your heart and restore your faith in the unbreakable bonds between humans and dogs. This is a story about loyalty that transcends time, illness, and even death itself. Nurse Linda Patterson was beginning her evening shift at Serenity Hospice Center in Portland, Oregon, when she noticed something extraordinary happening in the facility's garden courtyard. Through the large windows overlooking the peaceful outdoor space, she observed a magnificent elderly German shepherd sitting perfectly still beneath the old oak tree, his eyes fixed intently on the building as if he was waiting for something, or someone, specific. Linda, a compassionate woman in her 40s with 20 years of hospice nursing experience, had seen many unusual situations during her career, but the behavior of this particular dog was unlike anything she had witnessed before. The German shepherd appeared to be at least 10 years old, with a distinguished gray muzzle and wise, patient eyes that came with advanced age. His black and tan coat, though showing signs of age, was clean and well-maintained, suggesting he was not a stray but a beloved companion who had somehow found his way to their facility. "Dr. Martinez, you need to see this," Linda called to Dr. Elena Martinez, the hospice medical director, as she approached the window. Dr. Martinez, a dedicated physician in her early 50s with graying hair and kind eyes, joined Linda at the observation point and immediately understood why the nurse seemed so intrigued by their unexpected visitor. The dog had positioned himself with a clear view of room 12, where one of their long-term patients, Robert Thompson, was spending what were likely his final days. Robert, a 78-year-old retired mechanic, had been battling pancreatic cancer for 8 months and had chosen to spend his remaining time at the hospice center rather than continuing aggressive treatments that offered little hope. He was a quiet, gentle man who rarely had visitors, having outlived most of his friends and having no immediate family members still living. "How long has he been there?" Dr. Martinez asked, studying the German Shepherd's unwavering focus on Robert's room. The dog's posture suggested he had been maintaining his vigil for some time, and his calm, patient demeanor indicated this was not random wandering but purposeful waiting. "I noticed him about 3 hours ago when I arrived for my shift," Linda replied. "He hasn't moved from that spot, hasn't shown any signs of distress or agitation. It's almost like he knows exactly where he needs to be and is just waiting for the right moment to make his presence known." Dr. Martinez had worked in hospice care long enough to witness many touching reunions between dying patients and their beloved pets, but those visits were typically arranged by family members who brought the animals for final farewells. This situation was different. The dog had apparently found his way to the facility independently, suggesting a level of awareness and determination that was both remarkable and deeply moving. "Let me check Mr. Thompson's file," Dr. Martinez said, though she was fairly certain Robert had never mentioned having a dog. The elderly man's intake information listed no pets, no emergency contacts other than his attorney, and no personal belongings that suggested animal companionship. Yet the German Shepherd's focused attention on room 12 could not be coincidental. As evening shadows began to lengthen across the courtyard, the German Shepherd finally rose from his patient vigil and walked slowly toward the hospice entrance. His movements were deliberate and confident, as if he knew exactly where he was going and had simply been waiting for the appropriate time to announce his arrival. Linda and Dr. Martinez watched in amazement as the distinguished old dog approached the automatic doors with the dignity and purpose of a long-awaited visitor. The mystery of this remarkable German Shepherd's connection to Robert Thompson was about to unfold, revealing a story of love, loyalty, and the extraordinary bonds that exist between humans and their canine companions. 8 years earlier, Robert Thompson had walked into the Multnomah County Animal Shelter with a broken heart and an empty house that echoed with memories of his recently deceased wife, Margaret. After 45 years of marriage, Robert found himself alone for the first time in his adult life, struggling with grief and the overwhelming silence that had replaced Margaret's laughter and conversation. His daughter Susan, who lived across the country in Boston, had suggested that adopting a companion animal might help ease his loneliness and give him a sense of purpose during his retirement years. The shelter was bustling with activity that sunny afternoon in March 2016, filled with enthusiastic families looking for puppies and young dogs who would grow up with their children. Robert, however, found himself drawn to the quieter section where older animals waited with patient dignity for someone to give them a second chance. That's where he first encountered Bruno, a 3-year-old German Shepherd who had been surrendered by his previous family due to their inability to manage his size and energy in their small apartment. Bruno had been at the shelter for 6 months, watched as countless potential adopters passed by his kennel in favor of smaller, younger, or more traditionally appealing dogs. His intelligent dark eyes held a sadness that Robert immediately recognized, the look of someone who had lost everything they once knew and trusted. When their eyes met through the chain-link fencing, both man and dog seemed to understand that they needed each other in ways that transcended conventional pet adoption. "That's Bruno," explained Sarah Chin, the shelter's adoption coordinator, a compassionate young woman who had developed a special affection for the overlooked German Shepherd. "He's one of our longest residents. Bruno is incredibly well-trained, gentle with people and loyal beyond measure, but most families are looking for puppies or smaller dogs. He's been waiting so patiently for the right person to see what a special companion he could be." Robert spent the next hour sitting quietly outside Bruno's kennel, talking softly about Margaret, his empty house, and his hope that they might be able to help each other heal from their respective losses. Bruno listened with the attentiveness that German Shepherds are famous for, occasionally placing his nose against the fence when Robert's voice wavered with emotion. The connection between them was immediate and profound, built on mutual understanding of loss and the hope for companionship. The adoption process took 2 weeks to complete, during which Robert visited Bruno daily, bringing treats and spending time helping the dog learn to trust again. Sarah Chen was amazed by the transformation she witnessed in both man and dog as their bond deepened. Bruno's tail began to wag when he heard Robert's voice in the distance, and Robert's entire demeanor brightened during his visits to the shelter. When Robert finally brought Bruno home, the house that had felt like a tomb suddenly came alive again. Bruno's presence filled the silence with the soft sounds of breathing, the gentle click of nails on hardwood floors, and the comforting routine of caring for another living being. Robert found purpose in their daily walks, mealtimes, and the simple pleasure of having someone who was genuinely excited to see him when he returned from errands. For 8 wonderful years, Robert and Bruno had been inseparable companions. They had traveled together, weathered Robert's minor health scares, and created a routine that provided structure and meaning to both their lives. Bruno had been Robert's constant companion through everything, which made his mysterious appearance at the hospice center all the more remarkable and heartbreaking, as it suggested the loyal dog somehow understood that their time together was coming to an end. As Bruno approached the hospice entrance with determined steps, Dr. Martinez and Nurse Linda quickly realized they needed to understand how this remarkable dog had found his way to their facility. A quick call to Robert's emergency contact, his attorney David Walsh, revealed the heartbreaking circumstances that had led to Bruno's mysterious appearance at Serenity Hospice Center. Robert had to surrender Bruno to the Oregon Humane Society 3 weeks ago, Attorney Walsh explained over the phone, his voice heavy with emotion. It was one of the most difficult decisions he's ever had to make. Robert's cancer had progressed to the point where he could no longer provide proper care for Bruno, and he was preparing to enter hospice care. He was devastated about giving up his companion, but he wanted to ensure Bruno would find a good home while he was still young enough to adapt to a new family. The revelation sent chills through Dr. Martinez as she realized the full scope of what Bruno had accomplished. The Oregon Humane Society was located over 15 miles away from the hospice center, across busy city streets, through multiple neighborhoods and over the Willamette River. For an elderly dog to navigate such a complex urban landscape and find his way to the specific facility where his beloved human was dying was nothing short of miraculous. "We need to contact the Humane Society immediately," Dr. Martinez told Linda as they watched Bruno sit patiently by the entrance doors. "They must be searching for him, and we need to understand exactly when and how he disappeared." The call to the Humane Society revealed even more astonishing details about Bruno's journey. Shelter Director Michael Torres explained that Bruno had been adopted by a loving family just 5 days earlier, but had escaped from their fenced yard the previous evening. "The new family is heartbroken," Torres said. "They called us immediately when they discovered Bruno was missing. We've been searching the entire Northwest Portland area for him. How he ended up at your facility is beyond comprehension." Dr. Martinez found herself facing an unprecedented ethical dilemma. Bruno clearly belonged to his new adoptive family, who were undoubtedly worried sick about their missing dog. However, the German Shepherd had made an incredible journey to find Robert during what appeared to be his final days, suggesting a level of emotional intelligence and loyalty that demanded respect and consideration. "Mr. Walsh, does Robert know that Bruno was adopted?" Dr. Martinez asked, hoping to understand the full emotional landscape before making any decisions about how to handle the situation. "No, and I don't think he should," Walsh replied firmly. "Robert specifically asked me not to tell him anything about Bruno's adoption because he didn't want to worry about whether his dog was happy. He's already carrying so much guilt about having to surrender Bruno. Learning that the dog escaped and is trying to find him would only add to his suffering." As Dr. Martinez processed this information, she watched Bruno through the window. The elderly German Shepherd had positioned himself where he could see both the entrance and Robert's room, maintaining a patient vigil that spoke of absolute devotion. His calm demeanor suggested he was not lost or confused, but had arrived exactly where he intended to be. "Dr. Martinez," Linda said softly, "I think we need to let Bruno see Robert. Whatever brought him here, whatever impossible journey he made to find his way to us, it seems like Bruno has something important he needs to do." The decision would challenge hospice protocols and create complications with multiple parties, but Dr. Martinez realized she was witnessing something far more significant than a lost pet situation. She was observing the final chapter of an extraordinary love story. Dr. Martinez made the decision that her heart, rather than protocol, demanded. After contacting both the new adoptive family and the Oregon Humane Society to explain the extraordinary circumstances, she received unexpected support for allowing Bruno to spend time with Robert. The adoptive family, Tom and Carol Morrison, were moved to tears when they learned about Bruno's incredible journey and immediately insisted that the dog should be allowed to complete whatever mission had driven him to find his former companion. We can't imagine what Bruno must have sensed or understood to make such a journey, Carol Morrison said through tears during their phone conversation. If he needs to be with Robert right now, then that's where he belongs. We'll be here when he's ready to come home to us. Nurse Linda carefully opened the door to Robert's room, where the elderly man was sleeping peacefully under the influence of pain medication that had kept him comfortable but largely unconscious for the past 2 days. Bruno entered with reverent quiet, his nails making almost no sound on the polished floor as he approached the bed where his beloved human lay. The moment Bruno's presence registered with Robert was nothing short of magical. Despite the fog of medication and the weakness that had consumed him, Robert's eyes opened and immediately found Bruno's familiar face. The recognition was instant and overwhelming, causing tears to stream down the elderly man's cheeks as he struggled to find his voice. "Bruno? Oh my God, Bruno, how are you here?" Robert whispered, his voice barely audible but filled with wonder and joy. He extended a trembling hand toward his faithful companion, who immediately moved closer to gently rest his head within reach of Robert's touch. The reunion was so tender and emotional that Linda found herself crying as she witnessed the profound bond between man and dog. Bruno seemed to understand instinctively that Robert was fragile and ill. The dog's usual enthusiasm was replaced by gentle patience as he positioned himself beside the bed, allowing Robert to stroke his head and ears with whatever strength he could muster. Bruno's tail wagged slowly, and he made soft whimpering sounds that seemed to communicate both joy at their reunion and concern for Robert's condition. "I'm so sorry I had to leave you, boy," Robert whispered, continuing to pet Bruno with shaking hands. "I wanted to keep you with me forever, but I couldn't take care of you anymore. I hope you can forgive me." The guilt and sadness that had tormented Robert during his final weeks seemed to lift slightly as Bruno nuzzled closer, offering forgiveness and understanding that transcended human language. Dr. Martinez observed the interaction from the doorway, documenting what she knew would become a legendary story within their hospice community. Robert's vital signs, which had been steadily declining for days, showed remarkable improvement during Bruno's visit. His heart rate stabilized, his breathing became easier, and his overall demeanor transformed from resigned acceptance to peaceful contentment. "Bruno found a wonderful new family," Linda told Robert gently, not wanting him to worry about his dog's future. "They love him very much and they're taking good care of him. He just needed to see you one more time." Robert's smile was the first genuine expression of happiness Linda had seen from him since his arrival at the hospice. "He always was too smart for his own good," Robert said softly, continuing to stroke Bruno's graying muzzle. "Somehow he knew I needed to see him again, and he found a way to make it happen." As evening approached, neither Robert nor Bruno showed any signs of wanting to end their reunion, setting the stage for what would become the most touching vigil in the hospice center's history. As night settled over the hospice center, Bruno had taken up a position beside Robert's bed that he clearly had no intention of abandoning. The elderly German shepherd lay on a blanket that Nurse Linda had thoughtfully provided, his head resting on his paws but his eyes remaining alert and focused on Robert's face. Every breath, every movement, every sound from his beloved human was monitored with the devotion that only a dog could provide. Dr. Martinez had made the unprecedented decision to suspend normal visiting restrictions and allow Bruno to remain overnight. "Sometimes medicine is about more than medical protocols," she explained to her staff. "What we're witnessing here is healing that goes beyond anything we could provide with medications or procedures. This dog has given Robert something we never could, peace." Throughout the night, Robert drifted in and out of consciousness, but each time he awakened, his first instinct was to reach for Bruno. The dog seemed to sense these moments of awareness and would immediately lift his head to acknowledge Robert's touch, providing comfort and reassurance that he was not alone. Their communication was wordless but profound, built on 8 years of shared experiences and unconditional love. Tom and Carol Morrison, Bruno's new adoptive family, arrived at the hospice the following morning with supplies for Bruno and hearts full of respect for what they were witnessing. "We've only had Bruno for 5 days, but we can see the depth of his bond with Robert," Tom Morrison explained to Dr. Martinez. "Carol and I have decided that Bruno should stay here for as long as Robert needs him. This is where he belongs right now." Carol Morrison added, "We'll wait for Bruno for as long as it takes. Some things are more important than ownership papers." Their generosity and understanding added another layer of beauty to an already extraordinary story, demonstrating the best of human nature and supporting the profound connection between Robert and his faithful companion. As Robert's condition continued to decline, Bruno's behavior became even more remarkable. The dog seemed to anticipate Robert's needs before the medical staff could recognize them, alerting nurses when Robert was in pain by gently nudging their hands or moving restlessly beside the bed. When Robert's breathing became labored, Bruno would position himself closer, providing the comfort of his warm presence. On the third day of their reunion, Robert experienced a moment of clarity that Dr. Martinez recognized as often occurring near the end of life. With Bruno's head resting on the bed beside him, Robert found the strength to speak more clearly than he had in weeks. "Bruno, you've been the best friend an old man could ask for," Robert whispered, his voice filled with love and gratitude. "You saved me when Margaret died, and you've saved me again by finding your way back to me. I need you to know that letting you go was the hardest thing I've ever done, but I did it because I love you. Now I need you to let me go." Bruno's response was extraordinary. The dog lifted his head and looked directly into Robert's eyes, his tail wagging slowly as if he understood every word. He then gently licked Robert's hand and settled back into his vigilant position, but with a sense of peaceful acceptance that hadn't been present before. Nurse Linda, who had been caring for terminal patients for 2 decades, had never witnessed such profound communication between a human and animal. "It's like they're having a conversation that the rest of us can only partially understand," she told Dr. Martinez. "Bruno is helping Robert prepare for what's coming, and Robert is giving Bruno permission to eventually return to his new life." On the 4th morning of Bruno's vigil, Robert Thompson passed away peacefully at dawn with his faithful German Shepherd lying beside his bed. Bruno had been awake, as if sensing that the moment was approaching, and had gently placed his head on Robert's hand during his final breaths. The elderly man's face showed complete serenity, free from the pain and worry that had marked his features during his illness. Dr. Martinez, who had been monitoring Robert's condition throughout the night, witnessed Bruno's immediate response to his companion's passing. Instead of the distress or confusion that might be expected, the German Shepherd displayed a remarkable understanding of what had occurred. He remained beside Robert for nearly an hour, occasionally nuzzling his hand as if saying a final goodbye, before slowly rising and walking to the window where he sat looking out at the morning sky. Nurse Linda was amazed by Bruno's dignified acceptance of the situation. "He knows," she whispered to Dr. Martinez. "Somehow, he understands that Robert is at peace now, and his job here is finished." The dog's behavior suggested a level of emotional intelligence that transcended typical animal responses to death, indicating that his vigil had been about providing comfort during Robert's transition rather than simply being present. Tom and Carol Morrison arrived later that morning to take Bruno home, bringing with them a collection of Robert's personal items that Attorney Walsh had suggested might provide comfort during the dog's adjustment period. Among these items was Robert's favorite jacket, a photo of Robert and Margaret, and the tennis ball that had been Bruno's favorite toy during their years together. The reunion between Bruno and his new family was gentle and understanding. Bruno approached Tom and Carol with quiet acceptance, as if recognizing that this was the next chapter in his life journey. Carol Morrison knelt down to Bruno's level and spoke softly, "Robert asked us to take good care of you, and that's exactly what we're going to do. You'll always be welcome to visit him here whenever you need to." Dr. Martinez had arranged for a small memorial service in the hospice garden, where Robert's ashes would be scattered under the oak tree where Bruno had first maintained his vigil. Bruno attended the service with remarkable composure, sitting quietly as Attorney Walsh read Robert's final letter, which had been written specifically for his beloved companion. "To my faithful friend Bruno," Walsh read aloud, "if you're hearing this, it means you found your way back to me one last time, and I couldn't be more grateful. You gave me 8 years of unconditional love and helped me heal from losing Margaret. Now I need you to help Tom and Carol the same way you helped me. Be their faithful friend, bring them joy, and know that wherever I am, I'm watching over you with love and pride." What happened next would become the most talked about moment in the hospice center's history. As Attorney Walsh finished reading Robert's letter, Bruno walked calmly to the base of the oak tree and lay down in the exact spot where he had maintained his original vigil. He remained there for exactly 1 hour, the same amount of time he had spent saying goodbye to Robert in the room, before rising and walking directly to Tom and Carol Morrison. Bruno's message was clear. He had completed his mission of ensuring Robert didn't die alone, had properly said goodbye to his dearest friend, and was now ready to honor Robert's final wish by bringing love and companionship to his new family. The German Shepherd who had made an impossible 15-mile journey to find his dying companion had demonstrated that the bonds of love truly transcend death, and that the greatest gift we can give those we love is the courage to let them go when their time comes. If Bruno's incredible journey and final vigil moved you to tears, remember that the love between humans and dogs creates bonds that not even death can break. His impossible 15-mile journey to find Robert proved that loyalty and love can overcome any obstacle. Subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and share this story with someone who understands the special connection we share with our faithful companions. What did you think about Bruno's amazing final gift to Robert? Let us know in the comments below, and hug your pets a little tighter tonight, knowing that the love you share will last forever.